I think what has happened, it's fantastic news that the gentlemen have been rescued. It's good news for the industry, but what happened is an anomaly from what is happening or happened in the industry over the last couple of years. We have seen relative safety, relative good working relationships with the communities. So this, I think, is just one of those blips in the security apparatus, which I'm sure all the companies who've put our heads together, engaging further with the state governments, the federal government, NNPC, and the local communities in making sure we forestall further happenings and securing our people on ground.
Yeah, but I'm thinking as someone who plays in there, I'd like to know the level of interaction you're having with these communities, because we see there's quite a number of, there's a lot of unemployment as the recent statistics from the National Bureau of Statistics shows that we're seeing quite a lot of unemployment coming in that region. I'd like to know some of the initiatives that are going down to help, improve the situation in the Niger-Delta.
Look, the good thing is companies like ourselves have signed the GMOUs with the communities that is worked out what the working formula and engagement between ourselves, the local communities, the state government, and making sure the situation works out well for all parties working in the region. Creating jobs is a very important thing in every sector of the economy. Niger-Delta is also more important by virtue of its relative importance to the Nigerian economy and the oil and gas sector. For our company, we're doing a lot in engaging with the local community by creating jobs and employing local people in the field of operations where we work. And that is the continuous engagement we're doing in making sure we're engaging on a day-by-day basis, making sure we have sustained working relationships in keeping peace and security around our areas of operations.
It's good to note the improvement we've seen in insecurity in this region for quite a while. As you mentioned, this is just a blip. But I'd like you to speak to how you think this would, in the long run, activities like this would in the long run impact our ambitious targets for oil production and refining capacity.
I think, look, once there's relative calm, like we have seen the last couple of years, you've seen the production has gone from its ultimate low of about 1.2, 1.3 million barrels. We're hitting almost 2 million barrels now, and that shows relative sensitivity around what security entails in making sure all areas of operation is not affected and people are safe on ground working. Now, going forward, I think as we continue the engagement with the communities and the federal, state governments, the security apparatus within the country itself in making sure the areas that we operate in the Niger-Delta is safe, that in itself will ginger the companies to continue working, continuous investment in the sector in improving production across board.
All right, but I'd like you to speak now to more the global dynamics and the play for oil right now. We're seeing quite a number of activities happening in there. There's a meeting from OPEC expected next month. I'd like you to speak to the global dynamics and what your expectations for oil prices.
Look, there is a distortion in oil prices. If you've seen the last week, oil price been hovering between the highs of 75, 76, come back down to about 70. But I think there's a lot more politics at play here. An example is if you look at what's happening, taking into account the global dislocation, looking at what's happening in Venezuela, politically at the present time, their production is going downwards. Look at Iran, the renewals is not forthcoming. Look at what's happening. Also, the force majeure in Nigeria as well. Look at what's just happened with the Urals crude pipeline, raising concerns in oil flowing into Europe from Russia. That, putting all that together, should affect a huge spike in oil prices. But no, that's not what's happening. The U.S. shale production is on the rapid increase, and that is creating a very good balancing and helping a lot of the global buyers to watch the market and not go full out placing bets on buying a lot of oil in the futures market.
Interesting you mentioned the U.S. because I'd like you to get your thoughts on their play for oil right now. We saw they reach a record high, about 12.3 million barrels last week, and we're seeing that they're looking like they're going to sustain that momentum going into this week. I'd like to get your thoughts on the U.S. and what their play is for oil right now.
Look, it's political, driven by the quest of being the largest oil producer or producing country in the world. And America's mastered this. If you look at what's magical that's happened in the last 7 years, America has been growing its production at almost 1 million barrels a year. They've come from about 5 to 6 million barrels to now 12.3 million and increasing. This should be a cause for worry for countries like Nigeria that is dependent on our oil production. We need to redouble our efforts and focus in growing this. Going back to America, look at also what's happening, consolidation play. Look at Chevron and Occidental, they're going head-to-head bidding for Anadarko. There's going to be a lot more consolidation around the Permian Basin and the shale play, and this is to continue to focus on the main target in trying to build reserves, build and increase production to keep America at the forefront of being the global giant in oil production.
All right, then I'd like you to speak to your expectations for OPEC's meeting next month. We've seen some positioning from some of the oil ministers talking about maybe a possibility of extending the production cuts up to the end of the year.
Look, I think OPEC itself has got to now become a very politically aware, looking at what American shale producers are doing, ramping up and trying to close the gaps of any shortfall. OPEC cutting back, I don't think is going to be the corrective measure in trying to help shore up prices. I think OPEC needs to continue focusing and matching where they are in helping their member states increase production as well. Look, in the medium term, oil prices will come down. That is not a bad thing in itself, but if we sit back and let countries like Nigeria stay its production and not grow it, America keeps increasing its production, what is going to happen to countries like Nigeria and the other smaller OPEC producers who are in the sub 2 million barrel production per day? That is a dangerous position to be.